Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That's green.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Hopefully people will make it here. If Mike Neely doesn't make it here by the time we're to the presentations, which is going to take 2 seconds to get to, we'll just put the presentation off a little while till we can fit it in. Okay, so meeting's called to order. Are there any announcements?
We have Commissioner
Tom Hauser here. We have a commissioner whose father died just recently, and I think we should give her condolences. Deborah, her father died last Friday, I understand.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
You jumped the gun on me.
John Francis
John Francis Doyle.
Dolan Jr., Doyle
Jr.
Jr. fought in the Battle of the Bulge, World War II veteran.
Wow.
Ran a traditional jazz festival up here. He was a trombone player and a great guy. He was 93 years old. I'm sorry. 94.
Lived a long life.
It is long. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you for your condolences.
Okay. Hi, Barbara. Okay, any other announcements? Andy?
Reese, I'm going to ask you to try to project a little more when you speak, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, no. I'll try. Okay. Yes, Barbara?
Oh, I just want to announce that there's a terrible wreck, which is why I'm late, and that's why if everybody's not here. That's what's going on.
Fire and ambulance and
Mhm.
Everything's all.
There are like four or five cars all stacked on top of each other with bent front ends. So, not good.
It's on the freeway, but on the side roads.
Yeah, it's on the radio too, because as I came up on it, they were announcing it on NPR. So,
Is this a microphone?
Yes, you can. Push the button and get the green.
okay.
Does everyone understand how to use the microphone?
No. I've gone through with everybody, so red is mute, green is talk. That's simple. Should be a button.
And if everyone is not familiar, the restrooms are through this back door to the left.
Okay, anything else? I'm kind of glad we've had the opportunity to do this. Number one, it'll keep December meetings shorter. I mean, stack this stuff on it, we'd be there forever. And it gives us an opportunity, because we couldn't get into the city council room, to experience this room so that when we come down to deciding if we want to make the move, then we will have had at least a time in here and we'll kind of know what it's like. So, and if you can't hear me, please raise your hand and or shout at me or something. I will try to project. Okay, Mike Neely isn't here yet. Okay, so we're going to hold presentations until he does arrive, and then we'll work him in. Public appearances. Is there anybody from the public who would like to make a comment? Here comes Mike Neely. Okay, well, let's finish public appearances. Anybody from the public? Okay, well, that was easy. So, and Mike Neely walks in, gets to sit down and start.
Would you like some water?
Yeah, did you get caught in that?
Yes, it's enforcement of 7 o'clock time.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, 7 car. I quickly counted 5 as I was driving by. Okay, Mr. Neely, if you would like to give your presentation on Measure Y.
Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight. Sorry I'm a little late. But thank you for putting us early in the agenda. So Measure Y funds Measure Y was passed, what, 3 years ago now. Said the funds could only be used to support the library collection programs, improve access to the libraries, maintain aging library facilities, and that the funds would be supplemental to the existing funds. There were many accomplishments during the year. In the collections area, 3.3 million was spent on materials. That's both Measure Y and the regular funds. It increased Hoopla checkouts and added movie streaming, and the additional materials reduced the hold ratio. There are too many programs to discuss individually. We'd be here all night. But there were programs for all ages, young people, school children, adults, English, Spanish, tech classes, reading classes, all kinds of things. It was very successful as programs. For access, the elimination of fines had a great impact, I think, on the library. They brought some people back to the libraries. The Hublets gave access to the internet. The expanded literacy program for dyslexia was good in that it brings future library patrons in. There were no additional hours added to the access for during the year. So in the facilities area, the progress was a little slower than anticipated. It just takes longer than anybody thinks to do these upgrades. Petaluma refresh is still in progress. There were updates to the annex that were necessary. In each of the branches, there were LEDs, flat panel displays, the internet upgrades were made, and PCs in the branches were done, updated, and there were hotspots added, which also helped a lot. So this shows the total spending. The portion with the red, which isn't quite on your sheet, is Measure Y. So it shows that spending doubled almost since before Measure Y. Okay, go ahead next. So then for the summary for the 3 years, the revenue has been great. It's brought in almost $28 million. Expenses primarily on salaries and benefits now to the point where Measure Y covers 91 positions. Again, we've had another surplus last year, which brings us to a total of 10.5 million. And I think you have something on the agenda later on tonight to talk about what to do about that. Okay. For last year's budget overall, there was more revenue than expected, but that's safe to be not projecting things on the tax since you have no control over it. On the expense side of it, there were 2 areas of significant underspend. That was on salary and benefits, because Sonoma County is still a very expensive place to live and hard to bring people here. And in capital expenses. Because you didn't have people, I think it's related to the people. You don't have people, you can't do some of the projects. I think there was some concern about this slide. We're not trying to be critical here. We're just pointing out that Measure Y had several parts to it. And one was where the money could be spent, and the fact that it had to be supplemental to existing revenue. And for the capital spending, it appears that Measure Y has taken over the larger part of the capital spending. I don't see that as a problem right now, because the problem is really more money to spend than we have, but that's what the voters voted on, that's what they approved, and we think we should be respected. So in conclusion, there was another large surplus for the year. The money was spent all on Measure Y goals. There are a lot of accomplishments in the library. It's done great things during the year. More remains to be done. There are refreshes, and in terms of access, there's more demand for access to the library. in conclusion, I'd also like to thank the finance department for their great help in giving us help on the numbers, on the graphics department for putting out the report, and to Jane Clickman for her great help in keeping us organized. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
Down or
You
up?
can just leave it down.
Okay. I was wondering about the, when you had committee discussion as you're preparing this, what the committee's comments and thoughts and ideas were. The kind of the general, I think the last time there was a report last year, I know there's a lot of concern about Sunday hours, for example, and that. And so I was kind of wondering what kind of the big theme was coming out of the report. And secondly, wondering about the distribution of the report. I already saw it on the library website. I checked and I wondered if there's going to be a plan to go around and talk this up.
Okay, the distribution is really up to the library. We don't do anything to that, but we'd be glad if somebody wants to discuss it, be glad to do that. As far as the overall theme, we did have a discussion in the last meeting about demand for hours. We talked about, we went around the table and asked people, and most of them said there was a demand for hours. There were one or two that didn't, but there wasn't agreement on when. Some want Sunday, some want more hours during the week. In the past, we've heard that, oh, well, you know, they have to have the same hours, but in fact, I went back to look at the JPA and it doesn't say that. The JPA says it just has to have the same number of hours. So if the library decides to add hours, they could do it on different days in different libraries.
To your point about the hours, I was wondering if everyone, you mentioned that there were 91 positions now being funded by Measure Y. That has a lot to do with it has a lot to do with the fact that we do have 35% more hours, which then have to be staffed. So I mean, you know, that, so everybody makes that connection. Yeah, okay.
But it's hard to say, you know, that we can't afford it.
Right,
When we tend to have to.
right. Yeah, exactly. Was there any concern about the surplus or
Well,
just,
yeah, I mean, the voters wanted the money to spend.
yeah, okay.
And it is being spent. I think there's great things being done for the library. I'm just saying that there still is a demand. We went around the table and there was a demand for more hours.
That seemed to be the major,
I think that would be the first thing, because, you know, when we talk about materials, I mean, materials can take, we need more buildings if we're gonna get
yeah.
too many materials.
And Mike, I wanted to thank you for all your years. I know you've been on the whole time and chairing the last couple of years, and I appreciate all your work on this. Andy?
Mike, thanks very much for leading the group and putting together a great report. I wanted to just follow up on the last. Vicki, is this supposed to actually be amplifying anything?
It
It
is.
is, I just figured that out.
Where, well, it's not coming out of here.
That's because there would be feedback because you're so close to them, but it's.
So the microphones are only for the people back there.
And
So-
recording.
And for the recording, but for those of us here, we are not going to get the benefit of any
Well, yes, you are.
amplification.
But if we.
I understand the feedback issue, but.
Right.
Okay. I wanted to follow up on the last point where you were saying that the measure, and it's in the report too, that the Measure Y spending plan states that the Measure Y funds shall only be used to supplement existing revenue collected for the library and shall not be used to supplant existing library spending. I'm wondering if you could explain to me how you and the Measure Y committee interpret that, because I'm not sure I understand
Well,
what it's supposed to be saying.
if you look at the trend, go back to that slide.
And I saw the slide.
So if you look at the trend of the funding in the general fund, it's gone from a lowest of 77,000 down to 18,000. What else am I gonna take from that, but that, you know, there was a lot of money available in Measure Y, so more of the capital spending went to Measure Y.
Right, but I'm trying to, what's your sense of the
Well,
intent of the,
You know,
how do you guys interpret it, I guess? What
okay,
does
well,
it
I
mean
guess,
to
you know, what we interpreted was, okay, should be sort of level funding, to continue the trend on the general fund and pick up the slack with Measure Y.
Because when I look at that slide, forgetting the last 2 years, I don't see anything level. I see spending that has fluctuated wildly
A lot,
from
a lot.
77,000 one year to 930,000 in another year.
A lot,
Yeah.
but the lowest was 77. Right, and I went back 5 years, I went back several years before Measure Y started, because when I first looked at it, oh my God, went from 900 down to 18, and this doesn't look good. So I went back 5 years and said, okay, what's been the trend over a number of years? And, okay, of course, it's capital spending, so it's not going to be level. It's going to be project dependent. But still, I mean, it just is apparent to me, or looks to me as if the funding was reduced in the general fund and increased in Measure Y. As I say, I don't see that as a problem because we have plenty of money, but the committee's job is to say where all of the aspects of Measure Y with respect.
So does the committee interpret that you showed 2 categories here, capital and materials. Does the committee interpret that spending in every category should continue at the same level as it did prior to
Roughly,
Measure Y?
roughly. I mean, there's only 4 categories.
Okay, and they are what, please?
Okay, there'd be the salary and benefits, materials and programs, the general, which we don't really watch at all, and then capital spending. All right, so materials has gone up, and salary's certainly gone up, salaries and benefits have gone up, and capital has gone down.
Well, I don't know. I'm looking, it looks like materials have
Well,
gone down
It
too.
has gone down a little bit. The reason you see that footnote up there is because when I started this slide, that was 315,000 less. It was 1.1 million, and I was concerned about both materials and capital. But then Renee told us that, oh, there were some things, she came in late, and there were some entries that were not put in the books. We were working off the June financial report, and it wasn't in there, so I went ahead and adjusted it for what she said. So that brings it up to roughly even the last couple of years. Yes, it has gone down a little bit. I agree.
So I'm just a final point. I'm taking from what you're saying that the committee is saying to us as commissioners that we should be looking at those 3 categories of capital, materials, and salaries, and
Not rating one to put it all over into the Measure Y. That's all we're saying is that, you know, the Measure Y had several parts to it, and that should be respected.
thank you.
Tom?
I really don't have a question for you. I have a comment about the layout of the report, and this is probably more for Greg. And I'm a curmudgeon, but it looks fluffy when I get the grand jury report every year. It has no fluff to it at all. It's a serious document that just lays out the numbers and the comments and things like that. And I'm wondering if putting all these nice pictures and all that kind of stuff in here reduces the impact on some people. It did on me. And that's just a consideration for you to think about.
Would you like to respond?
You don't have to.
Okay.
It's my comment, my attitude.
Okay, David?
I have the opposite attitude. I think the pictures humanize the program, especially since this is going to be distributed, some copies, to the public. It's on the website. Graphics are really important for increased understanding.
Anybody else?
To me, graphics are like the ads in the newspaper that I learned to ignore years ago.
And me, I like a,
I'm gonna drop it. Just an ad. You shouldn't spend time.
yeah, I know. And I like a combination of the both. Before I take you, I do want to ask one question. It's 50,000 K that it's dropped, that's not 1,000, that's not much. I know the 931, I believe, if I remember the timing correctly, was moving in here. And that was, I mean, we had no funds. I mean, we had no funds except what we could use to move in here because Measure Y didn't exist. So, or we weren't getting the money at that point in time. It took, I don't know, it didn't start till January, then it took 2 or 3 months to go. So we were almost to the end of the fiscal year. So I don't see it so much as, oh God, taking away from the general fund and transferring it over. I see it as just providing the money to do Northwest, providing the money to do Petaluma. I mean, I know when they did Cloverdale, it was a huge struggle to get the money because we did it before Measure Y. And, but they managed to scrabble it together. So I don't know that there's anything, I don't see it as anything going on.
So a $30 million budget, 50,000, I agree, is a pretty small number, but the direction was the concern.
Okay. Ann?
So I have a different interpretation of this than you do. And we've talked about this before, but to me, when you look at these numbers, you see that throughout time, we just didn't have a whole lot of money to maintain our aging facilities.
Right.
And that's why are in the bad shape that they're in now. Measure Y allowed us to do that, to address these issues. So if we didn't have Measure Y, we would not have done the things that we have done.
No question.
It's not a question of replacing general fund money. It's a question of using it as it's appropriately designed to be used. It says you can use it to maintain aging facilities. That's what we've done.
Right.
That's my
Yeah.
interpretation
Yeah,
of it.
as I say, the trend was the most worrisome thing, to look at the money going down and from 20 down to 18.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Mike, very much for taking the time and getting through that mess on the freeway. You're not sure how to go back out of here?
No, well, they said that it's blocked up going to it all the way back to
Yeah.
Yeah, go put a
We're
little
very
hill.
grateful to your body. for letting me know these things.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Did we have a lab appointment?
There's reappointments.
Okay, I guess it's not. Okay, okay. I'm sorry, I saw advisory boards and I'm thinking, okay, but there's nothing in that section. Okay, moving on, the director's report. Oh, excuse me, Barbara?
We are supposed to take action on the Measure Y oversight, according to this, the agenda item, page 4. So I'm going to recommend that I move that the Library Commission accept the annual Measure Y Oversight Committee as presented.
That's down on 10.
That's
It's on page 4.
That's 10.
10.2.
10.2 on the agenda.
It's also item 3.1,
That was the report.
but the report has the action on it. Look at page 4.
It shouldn't.
It-
It shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't.
Well, it is.
But look at page 4, under information action, it says action.
We have it later on.
The action comes later on.
Screw it up.
I don't see, oh, well, anyway. No, the action is on 10.2, so we'll do it when we get there.
It's also on page 4.
That was a mistake. Okay. Director's report.
Well, welcome to the space here. Glad you got a chance to experience it. And thank the staff for decorating it so nicely and providing the goodies for you. October started out really well, and then it took a nosedive with the fires. So that dominated the last part of our month. And I'd like to invite Ray Holly, Community Engagement Manager, to come up and talk a little bit about what we did and what we learned.
Thank you, Chair Fox and Commissioners. Ray Holly. This report's in your packet, but I thought it'd be useful to go through it quickly. So this is what we're calling an after-action report in the Kincaid fire. The Kincaid fire was first reported on Wednesday evening, October 23rd. Started in the hills east of Geyserville, and by the time it was fully contained, 2 weeks later, it had burned 77,758 acres, which is almost 8% of the total acreage of Sonoma County, which is about 1 million acres, in case you wonder. At its peak, the fire threatened 90,000 structures and really began an unprecedented series of events, the public safety power shutoffs and evacuation orders that affected 200,000 people in Sonoma County. That's 40% of the population. And the shutoffs affected about 1 million customers in Northern California. The library system was impacted as well. Branches were in evacuation zones or had no electricity. Many staff, including myself, were evacuated for their homes for multiple days. The library soldiered on. The management team met every day. Some of us were calling in from hotel rooms in distant locations. Other people were here. And the goal was a speedy and safe reopening of the branches as quickly as possible, unlike the situation in 2017 where things dragged on quite a bit. There were detailed descriptions of opening service hours and things like that in the public services report that Sarah and Lana put together, but I just wanted to summarize that we opened every branch as quickly as electricity and evacuation orders allowed. 6 branches closed early, a couple of days after the fire started, primarily in response to evacuation orders. There was one single day, Sunday, October 27th, when all branches were closed. Normally, we would have only had one open, the Central Library. It was closed that day. The following day, we had 2 branches open here in Rohnert Park and in Petaluma. The next day, and for 2 days, we had Rohnert Park, Petaluma, and Sonoma open. Thursday, we opened 9 branches. Thursday of that following week. On Friday, we opened all branches except Healdsburg and Windsor. Healdsburg was just coming out of the evacuation order, and Windsor needed a more thorough cleaning than we were able to handle otherwise. But by Monday, November 4th, which the day you would have normally met, we were open and fully operational. I wanted to call out a couple of departments. Facilities and IT were at very high capacity during the closures, really going above and beyond, keeping the systems working. I wanted to call out facilities for traveling to the branches, sometimes inside evacuation zones, to shut down the HVA systems, which saved us an enormous amount of time, money, and days. If those systems would have kicked back on when the power came on, they would have sucked all that bad air into the branches. IT was constantly monitoring, Vicki and her staff monitoring all the technology processes and the networks. We'd get notes, network is up here, network is up there. Oh, wait, it's down here. No, it's back up. And they were really on it. And we had to inform the public. So my team and the IT team worked together seamlessly. There were times when I was watching emails from Kat Gore and Rano Saarinen. Okay, I've got the website updated. I got social media updated. And they were working from home. I'm not sure they took any time off or any days off. But they were working from their laptops. You know, this technology thing is pretty cool. One of the learnings for me was that the staff, we formed a sort of I'm calling it a hive, I don't know what else to call it, where people were watching for good quality news stuff from the sheriff's department, things from the county of Sonoma, not so much from PG&E, and liking and sharing that on social media, enhancing it, sharing it on other people's pages. So any patron who had access to social media had that information. For patrons who only had access to the radio, I was calling into the radio multiple times a day. I was on KSRO, KZST, KBBF. We were just doing the best I could. Public services staff, we had people driving in from evacuation zones and working at branches where they had never worked before. I'm so proud of them for everything they did. They were, and if the branches were full, they wanted to work anyway. They were going to evacuation centers, sometimes in another county. They were down in Marin County, helping at the evacuation center there. They were at the centers here. You've probably heard of this, but I wanted to mention it. Healdsburg Children's Librarian Charity Anderson was so concerned that her regulars were going to miss their story time that she did a story time on Facebook Live from the hotel that she was evacuated to. And she became a little bit of a social media star because that was shared so often. I wish somebody who remembers this better than me could back me up on this. I believe it was ULC Urban Libraries Council who then picked that up and that went national. And again, the staff was very impacted. People were still feeling it from the 2017 fires and the terrible, terrible air and conditions we suffered in the 2018 campfires. But they rallied, they worked together. Some of them talked to their supervisors. HR made our employee assistance program available to the staff members, and they took advantage of it when they wanted somebody to talk to. We believe our response was effective. It was patron-centered. There's things that we learned, on a personal basis. I was really surprised and disappointed in myself that I didn't have my employees' cell phone numbers at one out of the three, and I wanted to know if they were okay. So I had to email them and hope they would get the email, hope they were somewhere where they could get power. And then we immediately exchanged cell phone numbers. We started a text tree and we were able to keep track of each other. There's other things like that, and put out an all staff bulletin as soon as we all got back to work. Please let us know your cell phone numbers. Please let us know your emergency contact information, because we didn't realize how important that would be when nobody had any power and people were fleeing in all directions. Anyway, I think that's the end of my presentation. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm really very proud to have the association with our library system at this one that, times of just being exceptionally proud, just so unbelievable, people from, management, everybody in the branches, everybody in headquarters, it was just remarkable and impressive. And I was just so proud of everybody. I was thinking, of course, of 2 years ago in the fires and the big difference to me, and I'm interested in what Vicki has to say about this, was because everything was down at Central. And so we were just closed. Everything was closed. And that's what I'm remembering, because the phones and the whole system was stuff down. And by moving here, this helped.
Right, that did help, but also we lost power at the Central Library during the 2017 fires, and we did not lose power ever at the Santa Rosa Central Library this year. So the difference was that, and we also did not lose internet access, and we lost internet during 2017. And now that we're on the Scenic network, we have a much more robust backbone. So that was number one. And number two, we did not lose power. And so one thing I think I learned from this, if it matters, is that I learned that in Southern California, in San Diego County in particular, so Southern California Edison actually supplies generators to all the branches of the San Diego County libraries. And I want to find out more about that, because I think that if Southern California Edison can do that for the San Diego County libraries, they surely could think of a way to do that for Sonoma County. And I also think that for us, we have to be looking at in the next fiscal year And as we're coming into the new fiscal year, coming up with a strategy for basically making sure we have redundancy at an offsite facility. And I've been talking with the CTO of Santa Rosa, and they have some space in the sheriff's facility in West Sonoma County. And so I might be looking at co-locating all of our servers and things there. I've pared down so much of that. We don't have a lot now. Lots of what we're doing is in the cloud, in the secure cloud. But we still need internet access. We still need power to power the routers and the phone systems and so forth. And so that's an area where, we have some room for learning and growth, I think.
And I wanted to add one more thing. We got this today from Healdsburg. Patron stopped by the reference desk to say that her families and neighbors went to Petaluma during the evacuation of Healdsburg and stayed at a campground. They went to the Petaluma branch and got a hotspot. The entire group was able to log on through all their devices at the campground. The women's daughters did their homework online. Everyone was able to stay in touch with loved ones and follow the news. And the hotspot made evacuation more tolerable. And her only extra comment was, please get more of them, which we just did, and they deployed this week.
Right, we just deployed 200 more this week. And so I know this is really, really exciting. And we lowered the age limit from 18 to 13 because in addition, we deployed from the Sonoma Public Library Foundation the 100 hotspot Chromebook kits that have been distributed last week to all of the branches. So we only have 100 of those right now. And in 1 hour, all 10 were checked out at the Central Library, and shortly thereafter, similarly in the Northwest Branch. So you can see that people really need these devices. And what's really exciting is that we've learned a few things. After they're 2 days overdue, we can shut them off so they become just like plastic hockey pucks. And similarly with the Chromebooks, since they're cloud-based, we have a console and we can control them. And so then they really won't connect to Wi-Fi or anything. So we will be able to preserve the assets and yet make them available for so many more of our patrons. So yeah, that's really happy news.
Anything else on the fire? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. As all these fires were starting, I was sitting in the first workshop session at the CLA conference down south, and it was on library disasters. And I was sitting and thinking, oh, that'll work. Not this time, but next time. Oh, maybe we can do this time. I mean, it was just buzzing through my head while all of this was going on. And one of the women said she learned a big lesson. She made out this fabulous list with all the phone numbers of her staff members and placed it very nicely on her desk. And of course, the problems came while she wasn't at the desk. She was at home. She didn't have access to any of those phone numbers. And she said, so it's part of my stuff that I carry with me at all times now. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you, Ray.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody in the library system. I mean, I have heard nothing but wonderful reports, nothing but wonderful good things about the work that you guys did during that time. And I just want to thank you all for being part of it. So, anyway. Yes, well done. Okay, anything else? Nope, okay.
I actually have a question.
Okay,
Page 31 has the blue graph statistics. And we're coming up to budget time, and we have our counters that are counted by the hour branch. And this is a very general outlook, but we need to be able to see before we can decide on budgets and extra hours and not extra hours and when extra hours. You need to have detailed by branch, the usage. So we know at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. how many people were there and so forth like that. So we really need to have that together before we start our budget discussion.
Yes, you're right. We have, on the next page, it has by hour. We are gathering the branch by branch information. We wanted to start you off with a more general look, so you see the system-wide counts that we have, but you will get more detailed information as we go along. Barbara?
Yes, I was going to make that same point, because we did ask for the statistics last time. And I noticed that later on in the history and genealogy department report, that's the kind of thing, it makes their point, because you really can tell very specifically by hour. So I think that's the kind of thing, again, that we're looking for. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, financial report. Rich? I got your name right.
I can't even get it right. so.
Good, I don't feel so bad then.
Good evening. The financial report for September 2019, we discussed it today in the Finance Committee meeting. And just to go over just the basics, as you can see that general fund cash balance decreased to about $6 million from about $9 million at the end of August. These are September numbers. October will be out in about 4 days. So those will be available in our December meeting. Fiscal year to date revenue and expenditures. Basically, our excess, we have an excess of expenditures over revenues at this point, which is normal. We get a big cash influx at the end of during the middle to the end of November, along with the property, as the property taxes are paid. Total revenues and expenditures for the library for the month of September 19 were $1,248,000 in revenues and $4,235,000 in expenditures. Just another explanation of tax revenues. As you know, we have two funds. One is property taxes, one is sales taxes, or Measure Y funds. The main payments, property tax payments, are received in December and April of each year, with a final fiscal year true-up at the end of June, received by the library each year. Sales tax payments are received once a month for the sales tax revenue generated 2 months prior. So we are receiving, I believe, July's payments this month, and we'll receive August in December. Sales tax payment for September 2019 will be recorded, there you go, in November of 2019. Library's fund balance, the bottom line to everything once we're all done, decreased to $19,445,000 from the August balance of $22,441,000. Purchasing, we have the listing of vendors where we spent more than $25,000 during the month. And last but not least, the legal fees for legal services paid, the payments that were made during September 2019 are there at the bottom. Is there another? I think that's it. Any questions, comments?
Anyway, Barbara?
Just a small point, but we talked about this today in the Finance Committee.
Yes.
And the line that's under a vendor, State of California, amount paid $1.5 million, technically not paid to the State of California. That is actually goes into our OPEB trust, which is under the management of PERS. So the description is not PERS, the description is OPEB. It's an OPEB payment. and the vendor is actually the public employee retirement system.
Correct. I will correct that in the future.
Right. Yeah. We just did some clarification
Presentations.
about that, but just so
Correct.
everybody is aware that PERS and OPEB are not the same on that line. It's kind of, it's a big amount. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank
And
you.
also too, I think we discussed the invoice frequency for that payment is per schedule, not necessarily as needed. There is a schedule out there that determines, that dictates to us when these payments need to be made. So that'll, excuse me, be cleared to make that, or change to make that more clear in the future.
And the other thing that we're going to add under fund balance, start adding to the report is the restricted fund balance and the unrestricted fund balance.
Correct. The fund balance section will be divided like the 19 million and the 22 million. They'll be split out between restricted and unrestricted fund balance. Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay. Deborah.
Just a thank you for leaping in here.
Oh, thank you for having me and thank you for your patience while we all kind of climb the mountain of panic here to start. And we'll get to the top and come over the other side and make things easier as the months, as future months roll on.
Truly.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Rich, very much. And I'll copy her. Thank you for leaping in. Okie dokie. So commission reports. A lot of the meetings that I typically go to as chair were canceled due to either electrical outages or fires. I had one, or Tom and Stephen got an email from one patron wondering about Sonoma. Yes, only what I wrote to him was, he needed, number one, to try the Wi-Fi. He could have gotten the Wi-Fi just by sitting outside. But also when they turned the electricity on, it was jumping around. And I wrote this and explained it all to him. And I got a very nice note back, which will all be in the next chair report, saying that he was very, very pleased with the response and understanding what was going on now. So he didn't feel so, in my words, grouchy about it. So anyway, and again, I just want to thank everybody for hanging in there during all of this. It, I know, was hard, and learning how to take care of ourselves as we take care of other people is an important part of the step. So I like to be very conscious, and I understand Sarah Van Treese has been doing some mental health training, both for the employees as well as how they can handle patrons. So I think that's really important. And it was one of the major things that came out of library disaster workshop, is that we need to be able to do that. Okay, so moving on. Who wants to start? Randall?
I am Randall Neff from Windsor. Windsor had a thank you to first responders event Sunday a week ago, where they invited everyone to come out, hold up a sign saying thank you, and they took photographs off the top of a hook and ladder truck. And there were like thousands of people there. Staff from the Windsor Library set up a bunch of tables under a tent and had supplies there for people to make signs if they didn't bring one. So that was a library outreach. And then this past Saturday, 2 days ago, there was like a harvest festival thing on the town green. And here again, the library had a tent and was doing outreach and things like that for the people.
Barbara? Is this recorded?
Yes,
But only verbally?
it's being recorded on YouTube. That's right.
Oh, well, and also on a camera? I just wondered, since Randall said his name, I didn't know if we had to say our names or not.
See the camera back here?
No.
Up on the wall?
Hello? No, I don't. But anyway, Barbara McKenzie, Roanoke Park. I we had to turn these reports in about a week before when the last meeting was. So a whole bunch of stuff has happened since I turned my report in. But I wanted to point out a couple of things on this report. The International Space Station at Central Library was one of the top 2 things I've ever been involved with. It was just an incredible event to have that space station going overhead and having these students from the junior high school talking to them. I loved that event. It's great. I also want to say that the archives crawl was really so interesting. I went down there to a history and genealogy library, and always the staff is always so great and so helpful, and the resources are terrific. And I really loved that event. And I did want to say, oh yes, of course, thank the Roanoke Park and staff. I went down to the Roanoke Park Library, I think the first day after when the fires were on. It's kind of all a big blur now, all the stuff that's happened, but everybody was just working together, people who had never worked together before. And, it was just really neat. I took some snacks down and just tried to, add a little cheer, but they didn't need me to add any cheer because they're all doing really well. And I wanted to say that our city manager, Darren Jenkins, told us that there were probably about 10,000 more people in Roanoke Park during the fires than normal. All the stores were packed. There were trailers everywhere. There were people staying everywhere. And our library was just absolutely the center. It's so important. It's where so many people were routed. There were people in every chair. There were plugs in every plug. And it was just a wonderful safe haven and wonderful place for people to be able to come. And so I just applaud all the staff who were involved in any sort of way in keeping our libraries open. And that's basically everybody. So thank you. Karen?
Green light, good. So it's been a while. We had a good SOP meeting in September, and then I had to miss the October meeting. And then, like most of us, life went into chaos. I went up to ALA Executive Board for a historic 8-day meeting, which was not the chaotic part. It was actually quite good, except I can't tell you any of the decisions that we made because they're confidential. But and then came back a few hours early to immediately evacuate with my wife and cat to Napa and spend, another week there doing things long distance. The campus closed, employees displaced, you can imagine. We all lived it. I mean, I was not in a fairground, on a cot. I was in a hotel, but it was still pretty exciting stuff. So basically, I'm glad to be back, and I will resume. That is, the Sonoma State campus has been put so far behind that I really cannot do any SOP meetings until January because we're just trying to squeeze 16 weeks into a 13-week time frame and scrambling badly. But we will resume SOPs in January. And again, kudos to the libraries for just an amazing job during that period. And Sarah, I've sent you an email today to kind of get us back onto the archives train, even if it's just a couple of conversations before the new year comes. So,
Okay. David.
My report's in the packet.
Deborah?
My report's in the packet. However, as with everybody else, there are a couple of corrections. I did not go to the grand opening of the Windsor Wells Fargo celebration, which has been postponed to December. I did not attend the commission retreat, which has been postponed. And I was very sad not to be able to moderate the Honoring Their Service, a Veterans Day event honoring women in the military service that I hope is postponed, but I was really looking forward to that. My grandmother was in the Army, and my dad was in the Army also. And so I had a modicum of a personal interest in that. So I think it's wonderful that we were doing that. And then I was at the California Library Association meeting with a couple of other folks here, and I was in the middle of an advocacy presentation, and I saw about 5 people in the room look up and catch my eye, and their eyes were very round, and I thought, I wonder what's the problem. And all of them made a beeline to me and said, "You're being evacuated." And I said, "No, Windsor's fine." And they said, "No, you're being evacuated." So mercifully, my husband could evacuate my dad and the cat. And I didn't have to do anything except drive home from Pasadena. But as I was driving home from Pasadena the next morning, I saw fire trucks from Hermosa Beach, from 5 other Southern California beach communities that were heading up to us, and their fire hadn't broken out. So it was just a remarkable experience. And then to get home, we were in Petaluma, so I managed to sneak into the Petaluma Library also. And it was incredibly crowded. And so I just want to thank, echoing everybody else, I want to thank the staff and aren't we lucky? We're so lucky, especially those of us in Windsor are so lucky because we could be paradise right now. So anyway.
Thank you. I don't have a formal report this month, but I'd certainly like to echo what you were saying with relation to Healdsburg. You know, the first responders did an amazing job of protecting properties in our communities. We're so fortunate. And although Healdsburg was evacuated on Saturday and was one of the last towns to be allowed to return, I was really proud of the library staff, and I just wanted to point out that several of them got a shout out in the director's report. Our branch manager, John Haupt, and Freddie Gonzalez from our branch were down in Marin County, and they were working with the Marin County Free Library and providing books and other resources to families and especially children who had been displaced. And of course, Charity Anderson, our children's librarian, is now a social media star for doing story time. And this is just an indication of the fine folks that we have working in our library system. So very grateful to the staff for everything they did, and very happy to be back safely in our community. Thank you.
No report.
Okay, and my commissioner report. Basically, I was down at CLA during a lot of this. And I go through and I rewrite my notes because I have to. It's the only way I can remember anything. So I just took the hot topics or a few things from each thing I went to. So you can read it or not, it doesn't matter. But there were a couple of things. First of all, in that library disaster things, they said that their patron usage skyrocketed during a disaster. And what they finally figured out was it was the one safe, normal place that just sort of kept going on, that they could go in, be normal, decompress for at least a few moments in time before they had to go out and deal with all the stresses that they were surrounding them because of whatever disaster occurred. And that hit home. I mean, and what I'm hearing from what people are saying is that is what was happening. Rohnert Park, their increase in patronage, and I mean, people going, because it is safe. It is, I mean, the books are on the shelves and the librarians are there and they're calm, at least on the outside, sort of. Yeah, and it just, I mean, it was a good walk away. The other walk away that I had has absolutely nothing to do with anybody else but me. For the first time in my life, I wished I was 35 years, 40 years younger, because I would have liked to gone back to UCLA and taken some of the classes that were talked about in a social justice class that I went to. I mean, it was mind blowing. My head worked in a way it hasn't worked in a long time. And I mean, if I only had taken that one workshop in the 3 days, I would have been very happy, because that was a really, really good one. And I will work to keep that mind working like that. So anyway. Okay, moving on to what? Oh, Randall.
Let me just inject a personal report. My wife and I evacuated to Vacaville, to a pet-friendly hotel.
Yay.
And we're sitting there wondering if we're gonna have a house to go back to. The only saving grace was if we did lose the house, everything we owned was in our 2 cars and we could just go. One of the days I was there, I decided I had to do something different. So I went over to the Vacaville Public Library. It's a branch of whatever county that is.
Solano.
Yeah. And it's a big, beautiful library with lots of space and lots of stuff. And I had my laptop and I set it up and I put in my headphones. I spent 3 hours there, watching videos and all that. And I wandered around the library and looked at it. So even for me, their library was a refuge from what I was going through.
Mhm. Very good, very good. Anything else? Okay, so we'll move on into the committee reports. Director's evaluation. We canceled our original meeting and then had one on Friday. We met with Ann, and Barbara was there, and Karen was there, and Deborah was there. Very good discussion about the goals that we had talked about with our first meeting, and has moved forward and has accomplished a lot. If the goals weren't completed, they were well into being moved forward, and progress, immense amount of progress was made. In the course of the conversation and in a short meeting we had afterwards, we decided that in the closed session in January, we're going to go around to each commissioner and get their input as to director's effectiveness, et cetera. And then we're going to take it and write up a report and present it back to the commissioners in February in another closed session so that we can go through it and hash it out. We're not going to give out any formal forms for people. If you want one to kind of organize yourself, call me. I have a couple that I can suggest for you. But just, think about what you've experienced, what you've heard over the last 10 months, 9 months, 10 months, whatever it is, about how Ann is doing, how she's taken hold, what she's done to do outreach. I mean, I think she's been to every library now. She's worked on the floor of the libraries. She's talked with friends groups and labs, and to get to really know the libraries that she's dealing with and the staff in the same way. So I think that that's what we're going to do this next time in moving forward with the director's evaluation. And then in March, we'll accept it formally with the revisions or suggestions that people have made. Did I get that correct? People on the thing. Okay, I did, obviously. My memory must be working. Okay, finance, Randall.
We met earlier this afternoon and I didn't have time to write up a report and put it in the packet. Basically, there wasn't really terribly anything outstanding to report. We just did the financial reports that we covered in the meeting. Later on, we'll be getting to the surplus expenditures as part of this meeting. So nothing else.
All righty. Advocacy, Deborah?
Advocacy. There's a report in the packet, but let me make one correction and a couple of additions. It says Deborah to share the ULC advocacy guide. In fact, it is the United for Libraries, the UFL advocacy guide, which I will have in the next packet of information. And also, at the state level for advocacy, I wanted to make sure that we acknowledged Sarah Van Trees's role as the chair of the Advocacy and Legislative Committee for the California Library Association. She is stepping down, and everyone in CLA is very disappointed by that, but understand that she has lots of other things to do. So we just wanted to give her a shout out and say how wonderful she had done, really. She was a fabulous chair. And then at the national level, I've mentioned that the American Library Association is sponsoring Legislative Day in Washington in May. It usually does that every year unless the American Library Association conference is in Washington that year. It's in May, but there is also a special fly-in in February. And so they're focusing on federal legislation, and I have been invited to go to that, and I'm not sure whether Sarah has been as well, but it's a smaller group, and we talk about federal legislation. So I'll be there in late February. And then I also wanted to mention, I think everybody knows, but in American Libraries, the national magazine of the American Library Association, there was an article about advocacy, and Sonoma was featured in that. And we talked to Senator Mark McGuire, who was featured in a photograph. So we're very excited about that. And I have now copies of the magazine that I'm going to deliver to him, so that he is reminded yet again that that he needs to pay attention to libraries. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you.
Barbara.
May I ask a question about the advocacy report? Yes, I noticed that there've been some conversations about the renewal of the tax measure and looking into that. And I just want, on page 59, there's an indication that Reese agreed to share documentation from that campaign. I just want to note that I also have a whole couple of files full of stuff. And also I went to Representative Mike Thompson's harvest thing. I think it was the Friday before last. And I ran into Terry Price, who was a consultant who worked with us initially on that. And he is retired, but he happened to mention that he is doing some volunteer work. And I thought we could get him to come and at least start advising on thinking about the process and the timing and so forth. And I could help negotiate that if you want me to be involved in that or whatever. So anyway, just along those lines about the tax measure.
That would be great. Thanks, Barbara. That reminds me, let me add that we really do want to make sure that we're reaching out to all of the various jurisdictions to talk about the wonderful things that the tax measure has done for the library and for the community, because in no time at all, we're going to be thinking about renewing that tax measure. So we want to make sure that we are facing outward and making sure that we're singing the praises of and talking about all the interesting hotspots that are out there, and the various things that we're enriching the community by doing. So that we think is not just going to be the role of the advocacy committee, but it's going to be the role of the entire commission. So we're going to, of course, be dragooning you into efforts to move forward with that. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so Foundation Liaison. I believe that's Tom Hauser.
I want to report that there's a little uncertainty with the foundation board about whether they're willing to commit to a capital campaign, which is why we have Siri on board to raise money, starting with the first branch we're trying to do in southern Santa Rosa there, and then move on from that. And so it's a little unclear where they're going, and they're unclear where they're going, and they have a very small board right now, is my understanding. So I'm going Wednesday night to see, and we'll just keep monitoring them and come up with some kind of plan so we can move ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Measure Y Oversight Liaison, Randall.
Well, we had a wonderful presentation tonight, and the report is both in our packet and in this nice spiral bound thing. They have a meeting the first week in December at Central somewhere, at the Central boardroom. Wednesday?
December 5th.
Okay, December 5th.
Okay. Roseland Coalition. David.
Yes, Stephen couldn't be here tonight. I'm the alternate liaison to the Roseland Library Coalition. And I have a report, good news and bad news. The good news is in the first 4 months of this fiscal year, the Roseland Library has provided 69 programs to preschool, school age, and young adults in the Roseland community, reaching almost 1,000 individuals. The largest number of programs and attendees were to school-aged children roughly between the ages of 6 and 11. The library has continued to engage with Roseland residents, family, and students, and has received almost 400 surveys regarding the new Roseland Community Library. The survey is collecting preferences for programs and services in the new space, as well as additional public service hours. The library will continue to collect surveys from the public as the new space is developed, and library administration is working on a short and long-term outreach strategy with Anderson Brule, the architect firm leading the renovation process. Now, the bad news, we've got a projection from the architect that we'll have a delayed opening for the Roseland branch, up to 4 months of delay. Yes, preliminary range between March and May. Now, there are reasons for this. Fire suppression supports are required. There's no sprinklers in the building, no automated fire detection system because it used to be a private business. We're a public business and the amount of traffic is going to increase. So we need fire suppression. There are ADA issues. That's Americans with Disability Act issues. The sidewalk in front of the library and the path of travel is not sufficient. The slope from the sidewalk down to the parking lot is too steep, so it can't be used by somebody in a wheelchair. Plus, we need to add a restroom to satisfy because of our increased occupancy requirements. Now, these are not the kinds of things that delay an opening for 4 months. The big deal here is the estimated permit process with the city of Santa Rosa involving building and fire permits could take a minimum of 3 months. Now, hold on, when I saw this, Lana did a lot of the work on this report with me. Those of you who are familiar with Santa Rosa city government know that after the 2017 fires, the city established a fast track permit desk for people who are rebuilding. Well, the city of Santa Rosa has paid us $150,000, which pretty much cancels out the rent for the first year. So it's to their interest to give us the same or similar expedited permit treatment. And the big meeting on this is this coming Thursday with Santa Rosa Planning, Economic Development, and Building Department staff to discuss the permitting process and if there's any flexibility in this timeline. So we'll see you soon. More to come. Our next meeting in December 2nd, I'm sure we'll have a lot more information. And let's hope that the city has gone along and made the permit process more reasonable. So that's my report. It is what it is.
Barbara.
Thank you, David. That was very helpful and interesting. I'm wondering what I'm remembering is the last at least one winter, if not 2 winters, we had terrible heat problems in the existing Roseland branch. And I was wondering if it ever gets cold and rains, what the current arrangement is there in the current facility.
I'll ask Lana to come up and explain the problem with this plainly defective facility.
Lana Hedlowen, Public Services Division Manager. So we've been tracking the temperature in that building for quite a while. We tracked it in the summer, and of course, we're going to be tracking it in the winter. We recently got 3 new heaters from facilities that have a long range, and I believe they were installed in the last week. So we're going to see how those heaters go and if they're giving us enough of area coverage as well as getting us up to the temperatures that we need.
I'm particularly remembering that when I was on the Measure Y committee, Mr. Hernandez was really up in arms about the Roseland facility. And he sensitized me so much that that's why I wanted to make sure we were, had some sort of plans. Initially, we were going to be out of there by what, January? Yeah. And
Yeah,
so-
that was definitely our goal. And our concern for staff comfort and safety is 100%. I mean,
Yeah,
that's part of the
right.
reason why we've been tracking temperatures. And Selma, the on-site manager, has been terrific about communicating her needs.
You don't care about staff or concerned about customers that complain.
Well, I'm concerned about both. Thank you for reminding me. Of course, the staff who's there all the time. Yes, of course, we need to worry about them too. So it's very concerning though, and it sounds as though with these architectural delays, we're talking about additional expense as well to just build a whole new bathroom, add a whole new bathroom, and some of these other things sound expensive.
Yeah, we do hope to have more information after our meeting with the city this week, just in terms of the timeline. And then once we hear back from the city what we need to do with the permits, that will adjust our scope with the architect. And there, we still have to go through our decisions of what we want the library to look like and where the bathrooms need to be located. Where there's a lot of discussion about that for the temporary space. But we are happy to have those conversations once we have a better sense of what the delay is and why. Thank you.
Yes, people may remember that we were expecting a notice from the county to get out of the present branch, possibly as early as December or January. Well, not to my surprise, that's been indefinitely postponed. The Roseland Village project is not moving rapidly. So,
Just to confirm that information, we reached out to the Community Development Commission once we heard our news of the delay, and their estimated projection for demolition is August 2020. They are also held up by the permitting process.
Dominoes of permits, okay. Okay, anything else? Okay, no. Okay, do you have anything to add to the SOP, Karen? Or is that pretty much it?
I believe there's an SOP actually in here, right?
Yeah, reimbursements. Okay, for discussion. Okay, foundation and commission, I'm kind of, what I would like to know is, Tom, do you think we need to maintain an ad hoc committee? Or should we zero it out?
My honest opinion,
All right,
we have too many committees and we have
okay,
that seems like doubling up to me. So,
okay,
I mean, sometime maybe there'll be a need for it, but I don't see a need at this time.
okay. So let me get everybody's take on this. Is everybody in favor with doing away the foundation commission ad hoc committee? Barbara?
Well, could you kind of enlighten us, like why we had it and what it was supposed to do?
Okay, that was a result of Helena and I, the ad hoc committee. And we were trying to create a relationship and rebuild with the foundation people, with the board members. But they were not very receptive. And so we just sort of let it go. And I've been waiting for somebody to get things settled enough, both with their board and with our commission to move forward. But I think with the people we have on the as liaisons with the foundation, I don't think we need it anymore. That's my opinion.
So Jason was the liaison, commission
This was way
liaison.
before Jason.
Right, but I mean,
Yeah,
he was,
yeah.
and then now Tom is.
Tom is, and Jason's backup.
And Tom, have you started going to meetings? I know you're going Wednesday.
Wednesday would be my first.
Your first
They
one?
wouldn't let us come last month.
Okay. Well, I have full confidence in
They-
you're being our liaison, so I'm happy to not have the meeting of the committee.
An email was received saying that they did not want any library personnel there so they could discuss their relationship with the library. So nobody attended, is my understanding.
That was prior meeting? Okay. So you'll be there Wednesday. I have full confidence in you, and my recommendation is to follow Commissioner Hauser's recommendation. We disband the ad hoc for now.
Okay, so everybody in favor? Disbanding the.
Thumbs up?
Yes, okay. Everybody, anybody against it? Okay, so we are disbanding the ad hoc, Foundation Commission ad hoc committee. Okay, JPA bylaws report.
There's a written report in the packet. It's an old report, and the last sentence is incorrect because we are not asking for approval of the lease standards in an action item included elsewhere in the agenda. We're simply making a report elsewhere in the agenda to staff so they have that as guidance for their general understanding of how to approach the cities and deal with leases.
Okay, we'll discuss that later. Okay, that comes in 11. Okay, orientation and training, we're trying to get it, I think I saw a doodle this afternoon.
That's right.
With some possible dates. So hopefully we'll get it again. Okay, all-day lab
Excuse me.
committee.
Excuse me, on the Doodle poll, we're asking that everyone responds by Friday.
So you all got that? Respond by Friday? Okay. The all-day lab committee, I'm talking with Sarah Lagos tomorrow. We had to cancel it because of all the confusion around the fires. So we're gonna figure out what we're going to do to re-up it, if that's what we do. Okay, and archive task force committee. Let's
So I reached out to Sarah this morning to say that we would resume the conversation about the next steps. I would actually, I'm sorry, I would have to go way back into my notes to look at what we did in September, early October. But I don't know where we're at. Do you have any comments, Sarah?
Sure. Good evening. Sarah Vantries, Public Services Division Manager. You delegated to staff the responsibility to contact county staff, and we had a very productive meeting the week before the first planned public safety power outages, which really threw the county staff into, the county declared a state of emergency just for the power outages, and then a few weeks later, we had the fire. And so we're a little delayed in our timeline as well, but our first meeting between library staff and county staff was really productive. I think we have a good understanding of the challenges and opportunities, and I think we're going to have a really good working relationship to make recommendations both to the library and to the Board of Supervisors for moving forward. So.
Are we gonna get any money?
That's a question on the list.
Okay. Anything else? Barbara?
The only thing I could say is that when I was thinking about lessons from the last time, the only thing that was slightly better than the 2 years ago was we weren't worried that the archives were going to burn down. I mean, that was so terrifying. The fire was right up next to the, Los Gilicos. And so anyway, that was slight improvement. And anyway, it sounds like we're finally at last having a good conversation with the county. So appreciate that.
Deborah?
And have you talked to the historical commission about your meetings?
Yeah, I updated them at the October
Fabulous.
HRC meeting.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Moving right along to item 8, lab appointments. Looks like we have several. One sheet, several, well, that's good. Okay, so Santa Rosa, would one of the two of you like to read the resolution nominating the appointment? Or 76, page 76, if that's any help. Just the first,
I'm just laughing because it's been such long. I was like, David, did you do this one? He's like, no. Oh. I remember. Do I just read them?
just read that first
Should I read all of them?
section. No, just read the first one,
All right.
and then we'll have each person from that area.
I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant to the term as listed. Lily Amaturo to a teen advisory position on the Santa Rosa Library. Advisory Board for a term ending on June 30th, 2021.
Okay,
Second.
got a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? All right, she's been appointed. Okay, Randall, you want to read?
Excuse me, who did the second?
Barbara.
Oh, Barbara, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I need to call it out for you, don't I? You can't see. All righty.
I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant as to the term as listed. Daphne Cruz to a teen advisory position on the Windsor Library Advisory Board for a term ending in June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, Deborah Doyle seconded. Karen wasn't fast enough. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Okay, unanimously passed. Sonoma Valley, Tom.
I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant to the term as listed, Zanette Velasquez, to a teen advisory position on the Sonoma Valley Library Advisory Board for a term ending June 30, 2020.
All right, second?
Second.
Dave Cahill, seconded. All those in favor, say aye. All those against? Unanimously passed. Okay, and Guerneville. Huh? Okay, you want to do it already?
I move by resolution of the Sonoma County Library Commission reappoint the following members to the terms as listed: Rod Barth, John Schubert, and Arlene Jones to advisory positions on the Guerneville Library Advisory Board for terms ending on June 30th, 2023.
Okay, do I hear a second? Deborah Doyle, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Unanimously passed. All right, and moving on, we are to the consent calendar. Okay, is there anything on the consent calendar that somebody wants to comment on or remove? Okay, so,
I hate to do this, but number 9.3, I'd like to ask some questions about why we have a $250,000 budget and we're moving something for about 2/3.
okay, we will pull that from the consent calendar. So we're pulling 9.3 from the consent calendar. We'll move it down to section 10. And let's pass the consent calendar. So all those in favor of, oh no, we need
I move
somebody move
approval
it.
of the consent calendar except for item 9.3.
All right, okay, so McKinsey moved and Tom Hauser seconded for 9.1 and 9.2 remaining on the consent calendar. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Okay, unanimously accepted, passed. Okay, action items by motion. Shall we start with 9.3? Okay. Tom, you had some questions.
On page 120, it says that there's a $250,000 budget. And an extra $150,000 reallocated surplus funds for the contract for $180,000.
Okay, Lana?
The contract is that base price based on our initial RFP that we submitted in discussions with the company. We may see that figure increase once we have meetings with staff, stakeholders in the design of the vehicle. So I think we're actually at a really good place with that initial 180,000 to start those discussions. We may see that figure increase with change orders if we need to change anything on the vehicle. There's a number of technical specs to the vehicle. Again, until we really start to work on the actual fabrication of the vehicle, that price may increase. So I think 250 is a great overall budget. I don't expect that we will exceed that budget for this vehicle in terms of the fabrication of the outside of the vehicle. But that is my answer right now on that.
So
Oh, Dom?
what's the Measure Y 17-18 surplus, 250,000 plus an additional 150 in reallocated surplus, that's 400,000. You're saying we might have more than double the contract we're approving?
I don't expect that we will reach those limits. The 150,000 was recently reallocated from other items for that surplus, and that will be addressing the technology needs on the inside of the vehicle. So the 180,000 is creating the vehicle, creating the storage for things on the vehicle, and we're setting aside another 150,000 to buy things like computers or hotspots that need to go on the vehicle to support the programming that we'll be
3D
doing.
printer.
3D printers.
Okay, Barbara?
Yes, earlier this afternoon, I asked our director, just to verify, so everyone knows, we had talked about what kind of licensing is required to drive this vehicle, and it's not a commercial license, it's a regular person can get out there and do it. We don't anticipate, though, adding any staff in order to do this, right? This would be our existing staff do we know kind of how we're going to use this vehicle?
Yeah, our goal, and we've had several discussions with the commission about it. This is our first vehicle, and it's our first hybrid vehicle that's not just a bookmobile, but it'll have technology and programming supplies. So for our first vehicle, our only vehicle, we need to do the outreach in those areas to find out what the community needs and wants. So with staff, staffing working group and having the vehicle ready, we'll start to do that outreach and see what the community wants in terms of number of visits or type of visit. And the plan is, yes, that any staff member can drive the vehicle so we can support that kind of exploration now. In the future, if the vehicle is successful, we have a great imprint to create more vehicles if our budget allows. And then we'll have the information to see what areas along the coast really need or our reservations in the area. We know staff are visiting those areas now, but their visits aren't regular. And if we actually have a van that's going in those areas that's highly visible, and we're doing things like technology classes and providing that needed access in those areas on a regular basis, if we have that need, we're going to find a way to support it. So that could be more vehicles down the road. It could be staff to manage the schedule of those vehicles. But at this time, we just don't have that information until we're there.
So this is very exciting and could have multiple uses, and it's going to be just loaded with all kinds of great stuff. And it's going to go all around the county potentially.
Yes.
Great, thank you, good work.
Okay, Andy?
I have a really naive question. I apologize because I can see that you put a ton of work into the RFP and specifications. I mean no disrespect. And the last time that I was on, the bookmobile was in the middle of the previous century. So I know that the applications have changed, the technology has changed, but the bookmobile that I used to go to when I was a kid was a lot larger than this.
Mm-hmm.
Is this vehicle going to be adequate to provide, actual services to our constituents?
We believe so from this initial model. I mean, it has the spacing on the vehicle allows for shelving and book carts to come off of the vehicle. So if you've looked at the drawings at all, we can actually create a pop-up library outside the vehicle. So an awning comes out, we'll have tables and chairs, and then we can roll the book carts off of our lift off the vehicle and create a pop-up library space. So I believe in the specifications, we can fit anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 books. And through the conversations with staff, like maybe we need to plan for more space for books. I think again, it's just connecting with community on what they need and how they need it. and then responding in kind. So
Have you had a chance to talk with colleagues in other library systems that have used vehicles like this, that have that, pop-up capability, and you've gotten good reports from them?
yeah, I mean, part of the reason it took a little bit of time to put together the RFP is because we did want to connect with our other colleagues and how they're using it. We also now belong to the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services, which is a very active listserv that talks about many of these things. Like right now, the most common discussion is about DVD checkouts on the Bookmobile. So there's a lot of discussion, and we've seen more and more libraries going to this type of van. The reason that we specified the van was, again, so that any staff member can drive it and it's not an intimidating vehicle. And Dave Shacheva, our facilities manager, said it's a very comfortable vehicle in terms of the roads that we'll be going over, the power to take all of this equipment and books up. Some of these hills are along a coastal road. So all of that factors into what type of vehicle we're driving and when. So again, I know there's been a lot of concern about collections and having enough room for collections. And we'll have to see if we can modify the inside of the vehicle for that.
Well, it's really exciting. I appreciate all the work you did. And again, I don't mean to be critical. I'm excited to see
That's a
it.
good question.
Is there any talk about allowing, commissioners to drive the vehicle?
I think we can check with our insurance requirements.
I noticed the insurance was we've already approved that. I didn't notice that
We
particular
will
item.
certainly welcome commissioners as passengers on our excursions.
I only have one comment, that it's prejudicial against tall people.
We did request the Sprinter van that was longer and as tall as we could get it. Yes.
Just so
I'm
you
used
know,
to being prejudiced.
Yeah.
just so you know, like County of Los Angeles has a fleet
Mhm.
of these. Yes, they do. But they also have, more than double the number of branches that we have and much more area to cover. And there are other libraries. Doesn't Oakland have more than one?
Oakland has one.
Oh.
Mhm.
Okay, Deborah?
A former San Francisco Public Library commissioner and poet, Jewel Gomez, always used to say, let me back up. She was born in a very poor neighborhood. And so when the bookmobile came through, it was her salvation, she said. And so she said, if I believed in God, heaven would look like a bookmobile. Right?
One more thing to add, and hopefully we will not have, more natural disasters in our area, but it's pretty common. We had a flood in Guerneville, we had a fire. So with the addition of this vehicle, we can lend more supports in those areas a little bit easier. So again, taking the library outside to meet the needs of people in different areas.
Okay, anything else? David? Okay, so there's been a motion to approve the purchase order agreement. David Cahill, seconded by Barbara McKenzie. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? All right, unanimously passed. Okay, yes.
Just a follow-up question, I just want to, well, this kind of a question actually. Disasters, does it have ability to charge everybody's device without?
Has a generator.
Sucking down, it has a
It
generator?
has generators.
Separate generator?
Yes. Yeah. And another cool thing that I've been working on this part of it. Lana's done heavy lifting, but there will actually be a router on the vehicle that will take more than one cellular connection and team them so that you can get double the bandwidth available. Or if you're in an area where one provider doesn't have good coverage, the other will just take over. So it's very, very versatile. And I got a chance to talk to someone who's working in very rural mountainous areas, and this is a good choice for us in the way of router that's gonna be on the unit.
Right. We also have solar panels, which is great.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Lana. Okay, so moving on to 10. Approving the schedule of surplus spending. I need a motion. And then we'll have a discussion, right?
We spent a lot of time discussing this in the finance committee meeting. And I think that the consensus was that we should get a lot more information on these items that we're talking, because there's a line item like $500,000 and it's described with like 3 words. And we would like to get a much more detailed proposal for each of the items. We had a very detailed proposal a year ago when we were doing surplus funds. One of the things they described was the van that we're finally getting. So I think that's a good model so that we have a clue. Because it's not just us, but we're gonna have to sell this to the patrons until our jurisdictions as well. So we were gonna defer this and get a lot more information, and hopefully we'll have it for the next commission meeting.
Finance committee, we're gonna do finance
I
committee
do
first.
want to notice a typo on this page, double typo.
There's lots of them.
Yeah, Roseland tenant improvement. It only has 2 N's, 1 in the middle and 1 at the end, instead of 2 in the middle.
So we're going to table this until a future meeting.
Barbara?
Yeah, to follow up and add on to what Randall just said, the intention would be to have the staff bring back a lot of detail to the next finance committee meeting. And then so it won't be on the, or wait, are we going to talk about it at the December commission meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
there's no finance committee meeting before the
Okay.
next commission, so we'll bring it straight to the commission meeting.
Straight to commission on December 2nd. Okay, thank you.
As I say, we spent like 30 minutes in the finance committee asking questions about every item. It'd be nice to document that going forward. So tabling.
Okay, so the approving the schedule of surplus spending has been tabled to December 2nd, until December 2nd. Okay, accepting the annual report of the Measure Y Oversight Committee.
So move.
Okay,
Second.
Randall's moved and Andy's seconded. At least that's the one I heard. Okay, so all of those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? Unanimously passed. Okay, so now we're down to 10.3, approving the reduction of history and genealogy library hours. Sarah?
Good evening again, Sarah Vantries, Public Services Division Manager. I'm coming to you tonight with a recommendation to better align the public services hours at our history and genealogy library with the needs of the community. And normally you don't think about that as a reduction in service hours, but what I'd like to tell you about is just how we're serving the community currently and the opportunities that we're missing by maintaining our current schedule. As you know, our history and genealogy library is a specialized collection of materials, and they're housed in a standalone facility. It's called the Annex because it's adjacent to our central library, but it is a separate location in terms of kind of building maintenance, staffing, security there. It has been open the same number of hours as our regional libraries since 2017, when we expanded hours thanks to Measure Y. So it's now open 54 hours a week over 6 days, the same as all of our library branches. However, we only have a staff of 4.5 full-time equivalent staff members, 4 full-time folks and 1 part-time staff member. And what that has meant is that basically allows for a safe minimum staffing of the branch, provided that staff are not on vacation or get sick. and that they don't leave the building for outreach or programs or trainings or meetings. And that's created some inefficiencies there and has caused us to have to turn down a number of really interesting outreach opportunities. For example, this week we had to turn down an opportunity to teach high school students about using primary sources because we need to keep that building open. You'll see some of the statistics that I shared. We are looking at reducing the evening hours because what we see is that the library is busiest during the day. Although we don't have a lot of visitors, the folks who do come in tend to spend several hours at a time or maybe the whole day. And that's usually in the early afternoon for a few hours and then all day on Saturdays. I have a corrected document for you. If you looked closely at 10.3.1, can you help me pass that way? If you look closely at those details on the number of folks coming in and out, you might have noticed that they are the same. That's incorrect. There's a copy and paste error. I guess we can keep blaming things on the Kincaid fire for a while, putting something together while also trying to get branches open and keep staff safe. We can use that excuse a bit longer. However, we did review the correct graphs, so I just wanted to make sure you had them. But what this is showing us is, this building is not very busy. And especially in the evenings. These door counter statistics show us, in the evening, we see maybe 2 people coming in or going out in any given hour. And the thing about those numbers is that it also includes staff. So the security guard is coming to check on folks. Someone from Central is coming across the alley to cover a break. I'm stopping in to, drop off paperwork. And so our numbers as the staff have recorded them are actually even a bit lower, that we're normally seeing 0 to 1 patrons in the evening after 6 p.m. However, we know that there's a lot of value in keeping this library open to the public so that people can access those collections. And our staff are also busy answering a lot of questions by email and over the phone. As you probably are aware, genealogy is a really big hobby right now across the US. And so they're fielding questions and inquiries from across the country and even around the world. And so we know that we want to keep the building open and have this staff to be able to respond to these patron needs. But I also want the staff to be able to do more events in the community. Commissioner McKenzie mentioned the archives crawl, and I think many of you have attended events at History and Genealogy that drew a large number of folks or offsite. For example, they had a very popular table at the Sonoma Ready Day, sharing information about how regular members of the community can preserve their own family history and photographs prior to disaster. So we want to make sure that that can be a priority. The other issue is that these staff have special skills. We have archivists on staff, and we want to make sure that they have the time that's needed in order to really manage our archives. As you know, that's been an ongoing problem. Part of it is the out of sight, out of mind, and the time that it takes to travel to our archives. But it also has to do with, you're trying to stretch the staff to keep us open in the evening. Staff aren't able to complete processing of new materials, let alone devote the kind of mental time to solving the issue and working with the county on that challenge right now. So our recommendation again is to reduce the hours on Monday and Wednesday evenings, closing at 6 p.m. both days. That would still maintain Monday through Saturday service, 48 hours a week. We can comfortably cover that with our staff, but also give them the additional time to develop and lead programs and outreach throughout the community to manage the archives and better respond to those information needs from our residents and also patrons from afar. There would be a minor cost savings, obviously slight reduction in our utilities costs and facilities maintenance, and also extra help employees that have been required in order to cover for employee vacations and sick time and meetings.
Okay, Tom, questions?
I want to say that this is a really excellent written report. It explains why we should cut hours. It explains it lucidly. It's a good reason. As Randall says, we need to have reasons for why we're doing things. And I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve the reduction of history and genealogy library hours on Monday and Wednesday evenings beginning on December 1, 2019.
Second.
All right, so Tom Hauser moved, Andy seconded. Okay, is there any other discussion about this? Karen?
This may not sound relevant, but it kind of is. Is the library continuing to subscribe to these digital Sanborn maps?
I think so, yes.
Okay. It's just one of those things that would be nice to be able to have access to.
Okay, Barbara?
Yeah, and I agree with, I just wanted to underline what Tom said, and I love the fact that we're actually, in terms of our door counters, just like real specific. It's just so clear what we need to know. And also I love the idea of doing more outreach. The resources in that building are just amazing, and both the stuff on the shelves and then all the computer capacity. And so I think the idea of getting out in the public is, since it's so underutilized, apparently, that I love the idea of doing more outreach. So thank you for your excellent report.
Okay, anything else? All right, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody against? Unanimously passed. You got your reduction in hours.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the library reimbursement policies or process. It's just for discussion now. Do you want to take the lead? Go ahead.
All right. So. let's get the right page.
191.
Okay. So close. 8, 9, 9. So this is the first SOP?
Oh,
Second.
the second.
Okay. This is the second SOP. Since we reorganized this summer and picked a new workflow. This SOP is I'll just read the rationale. In the course of their service, commissioners may incur travel, meeting-related and professional development expenses that are eligible for reimbursement. By following these procedures, oh, darn it. Commissioners can ensure that they receive reimbursement promptly and with minimal impact on the time of library staff. So it's really designed to help the commissioners fill out the paperwork and help and reduce the impact on staff of various things, including a big pileup at the end of the year or lots of questions that are answered by an SOP.
So, anybody have any comments or statements? Yes,
I think it's well drafted. And it's fine.
all righty. Okay, so we'll bring it up for approval next month.
Right? Good job. Thank you.
Okay, so the possibility of moving library commission meetings to Runner Park headquarters. I'll let you and Vicki, Ann and Vicki.
So we have outlined here a list of reasons, good things and bad things about each location. And I hope you have had a chance to look through that. now that you've had an opportunity to experience having a meeting here, if you have additional questions or concerns, we can address those. If you have any specific technology questions, Vicki is available as well to deal with those. Andy?
As my colleague and friend, Tom Hauser, would say, based on his legal training, res ipse loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. I mean, this is so much better. I can actually hear what other commissioners are saying. I feel like we're actually in a meeting as opposed to appearing on a stage. So I, for one, would be very happy to adopt this, and I feel quite confident based on what you explained that we have or can cover the various technical issues. So thank you for suggesting this.
Barbara? Long ago, when we moved into this, we we're talking about having this place as headquarters. I loved the idea of having our meetings here. And then I thought, oh, that's very self-serving because then, I just have to drive across town. However, my concern is the same concern, and it's probably addressed by you in your research, Vicki, but my concern was the use of the Granicus and whether we are going to just like be on YouTube somewhere or whether we're going to have these indexed meetings. That's one of my concerns.
And I'd like to address that. First of all, we don't have our own Granicus account. We're hitching a wagon to the city star. And so in this particular case for tonight, that's right, we will be on YouTube, but we'll be on the library's YouTube channel. So if you'd like me to send you the link for tonight's meeting so you can look at it, you can. We're using some technology tonight that we would not be using in the future. We'd be using a live stream device called a Teradek. And we've got to get some training going on that, but it's a pretty straightforward capability to use with a standard video camera. And the software that we have that our Bridget is running back there right now. So that's number one. Number two, we would go for a less expensive version of something called iCompass, which they're using at the city of Sonoma. I'm looking at you.
I know you keep looking at me like I understand anywhere.
Anyway, so that will allow the video indexing of the meetings, so that if you wanted to go to 10.3.1, you can scroll to it. Yes. And so iCompass is being used by probably 30 or more California small cities and towns. It's not nearly as expensive, and it's much more modern actually in its interface than Granicus is. So I have been looking at all of the possibilities, and it seems outrageous to spend nearly double the amount of money for Granicus when this iCompass product and others are much less expensive and much more robust and newer in their design.
Well, my question was, we don't have comprehensive notes anymore. It's like everything, we expect people to go look. And so you've got to really be able to find it and not sit there through one whole
Correct.
YouTube that's 2 hours long and try to find stuff.
Right.
So that's, I appreciate your research on that. And of course, if you can save us some money with a better system, that'd be great too. My feeling is here, it's a little awkward. I understand. It is hard to hear down at the council chambers down there, and it's what it sounds like. I can't tell what people are saying. So I like this. It's kind of friendly. I feel like the mood is a little more congenial or something almost, because it's kind of a, good, but I don't like I guess the camera is just like aimed down here. And so in terms of like getting a view of everything
Right.
that's going on here, we don't have that anymore.
Okay, so what I want to say to you again, that tonight is one thing. If you all choose to do this in the future, we're just doing this
Okay.
by proof of concept tonight.
Okay.
So this capability with iCompass will let us actually live stream to 5 different sources if we wanted to. And
Meaning what? 5 cameras?
no, it means 5 different live streams. So if we wanted to live stream to Facebook, if we wanted to
Okay.
live stream to YouTube, in this particular case, it's called Video Manager. That's part of this software. And so Video Manager has the indexing built into it so
Okay.
that you can scroll to item 10.3.1, as I explained. And then you can see what went on at that particular agenda item. So what we're doing tonight is just general proof of concept. If you can just get your head wrapped around that. And then what we will be doing with Video Manager, it actually helps us compile the video. If we want to stream it to more than one service, like YouTube, like Facebook Live, like some of these other things, it's possible. What we're doing tonight, because the city council chambers was unavailable, and the cameras and the complex equipment that they're running is not available to us tonight. So what I'm trying to demonstrate to you tonight is the fact that this can be done without a great big production. We have these cameras in here, and those are not the cameras that we'll be using for actual live streaming, should you decide that you want to do this.
Well, how would it work if sitting here is probably like the only kind of construction we could have, like a U kind of thing. So how could somebody watching know who was talking if they can't see us?
Well,
Because
first of all, that'll be the camera work, and the camera is capable of focusing in on the person who's talking.
that's if somebody's managing the cameras back then. They're not still, like they're not locked in
These are
place right now?
automated cameras. These are what we call video conference cameras. Again, I've just put this together tonight, Barbara, as a proof of concept. It's not going to be as polished
Right.
tonight as it is when we have the camera people
No, I'm
downtown.
just talking about in the future though.
Yes,
So on one of these different, Compass or Video Manager, or whatever, it's going to be like screening the people that are talking. It's not just going to be like a locked camera in the back.
That's
You
right.
can't see anybody except that
it'll
who's
be
talking.
panning and
Okay.
other kinds of
Okay.
joystick capabilities, yes.
So what I'm gonna do at your recommendation is then watch our tonight's meeting, or at least part of it, and kind of listen to see what it sounds like. That'd
Right.
be- And then not worry about the rest of it because everything else will be,
Right, and I would
bigger and
encourage
better.
you to actually go online to the City of Sonoma Valley and look at their city council
Okay.
webpage, and you can see examples of iCompass at work.
Sonoma City Council.
Sonoma City Council,
City of Sonoma City Council.
yes,
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, David?
Yeah, following up, I also have concerns about the viewer experience
Yeah.
Right.
under the new system, if we do it.
The viewer experience will be much the same as it is with Granicus.
Okay, my concern is when we're in our rig, if we go this route, when everything is fully installed and all the wires are connected, will there be somebody during our meetings to direct cameras to who is speaking?
Yes,
Okay, and what about public comment? Where will the public stand to deliver public comments, and will there be a camera on them?
right. So right now, of course, I'm sitting here running the meeting. I could sit in the back, whatever. The truth of the matter is the cameras can focus on anyone sitting in this audience. And then someone, we have a wireless microphone. Do you see the one that Jane is using?
No.
Okay, so that could be taken around to someone, or we could set it up on a stand. There are multiple opportunities for the details associated with this. I think, I'm going to say something, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I think you all know me well enough by now that we're going to try to make it as perfect as possible. And, I'm not going to let it be half-baked. It's just not going to happen. It has to be professional. It will be closed captioned. All of the ADA accessible kinds of rules that are available to us. And I really want to encourage you, the City of Sonoma City Council. I even talked to their people. I've talked to various California city clerks and commission clerks around the state, and also in the lower 48 as well as Canada before, we looked at this solution.
Go ahead.
So I obviously you've researched this a lot, and I don't have any, I'm not questioning all of your research and your good ideas at all. The city of Sonoma, if we watch that, if it's like the city of Rohnert Park and some of these other cities, you have people sitting in a little arc in the front, and the camera's aimed at them, and they're either watching the city council at whole or individuals, and then there's also a camera on the public person. But this U thing, like it's these sideways cameras in terms of David saying the viewer experience. I mean, if that camera was maybe in the middle of the room and it's going back and forth, I could see it, but if they're just like this.
Those will not be the cameras that we're using.
They're going to come off here.
We can
Put
place
one
it
on
either.
either
There,
side,
there.
and then you can get a full face look at you.
No, I want
is what you
you on
want.
camera. Okay, no, we have to
You're
ask
going to
these
get a full
questions.
view.
Huh?
You'll get a full.
I
full
promise
view.
you that it'll be a quality viewing experience. And if it's not, you can beat me into a bloody pulp,
I would never
Barbara.
do that. I would never do that.
Anyway, the bottom line is, there will be multiple cameras, there will be multiple views. There's just a lot about this solution that I think is in the best interest of the library, technically as well as personally. And, if we need to make changes in the arrangement of this room, all these tables are on wheels and they're very adjustable. Right now, I think the wheels are locked. But the truth of the matter is, we tried to make this room as flexible as possible for its multiple uses, whether it's the commission meeting, whether it's a training session for staff, et cetera. So,
Well, I thought just lastly, my last comment is that it's a really good idea just in terms of the staff. I mean, the staff's already here and everybody is schlep all their stuff, go down to Santa Rosa, schlep, whatever. This flows a lot better in terms of just at the end of a long day to stay at a long meeting and have to drive to another town to do it. It's always seemed, crazy to me. So I'm supportive of that idea.
I'm interested in cost. Oh, excuse me. I'm interested in the cost. And I think you're saying we're going to have to buy some additional equipment and software? No, because you said different cameras or something.
we have cameras.
Okay,
There are
so.
cameras that, we have
What-
cameras
the
available.
question I'm asking, will there be additional costs for hardware or software?
Initially, it says.
Well, yes, initially, and I talked about that. And it is going to end up being less than what we're paying the city of Santa
Okay,
Rosa.
but I'm talking about
their
hardware and
software.
software that we have to buy. Or is it rented or something?
No, it's purchased software that we have to purchase.
Okay.
And
so
that
There's a
amount
cost for that.
yes, there is.
Okay. And then we have to have a person operating the thing.
We have staff, that's right.
Okay.
And we
When you
adjust their
add
schedule.
up the out-of-pocket to continuing expenses, I think you're saying that they're estimated to be in the same range as what we're paying Santa Rosa right now?
I think it'll actually end up being less.
Okay.
I mean, if you want me to build a spreadsheet and lay it out for you so that it's to the penny, we can work that out.
Well, I just want to get an idea about cost. There's
Right.
some upfront costs still to come.
Right.
Is that 1,000 or 10,000?
It's about $9,100.
So it's about 10,000 out of pocket. And then you think it'll be less than $550, and that would include a month that would include an operator for our 3-hour meeting. Okay, thank you.
As part of the discussion, let me just say that I'd much rather have it here, even though it's farther away from Windsor, because the room where we meet is dangerous. The stairs are dangerous. I always think that someone, if not me, is going to fall down those stairs. So I would much rather have it here. It's much more convenient for the staff. And I think that chances are the record is going to be just as accessible, if not more accessible than it is now. So I would certainly want to move the discussion along and include those of us who really think that it's going to be better here.
Karen?
Piggyback on what Deborah said. It's I'm no longer just a mile from home when the meeting ends, which was kind of a nice convenience, but it's light. You're never gonna learn this. It's
Yes, more, that's what I was.
it's clean, it's modern. We can see each other. We can see people in the audience. They're no longer up there at the top of those crazy stairs. And that place is dark and dank and smelly. The AV is terrible. It is, it's really. Oh, we don't mention rats, no, that just creeps me out. But I think this is a better environment for everyone. And when people are in a comfortable environment, they feel better in general about A, volunteering, B, for the public, taking their time to come to meetings. It's just a better milieu and a better way to have a meeting.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I was a bit concerned about this because of the technical issues that I think we've hashed out. I will not be sorry to say goodbye to the outside stairs of death. Not to mention the inside hazardous stairs. So anyway.
Barbara?
I have one question, one comment. My prediction will be, we don't get that many people from the public anyway, but I would suspect fewer people would come here. It's a little harder to find and stuff, so just FYI, but we don't usually have a lot of public members either. And also for closed session, what will we do? Oh, the bar conference room way down there. Well, in fact, we only have one conference room left, right?
This one and the one at the end.
Yeah, okay.
This is number one.
This is number one. It's in front of the building.
Deborah?
I'm sorry to talk for a second time, but I also want to thank, of course, the people who do allow us to use their space for our meetings. Not that it's not a wonderful meeting room, it's just not the best meeting room for us, I wouldn't think.
Yes, it's no aspersions on what the resources they had to offer us.
No?
Randall?
First of all, we need some more lights on the outside. Coming back from dinner, I only got here because I knew where it was. We need a lighted sign right on the street, and the normal sign that's there was completely in the dark.
Yeah.
Now, this is a technical issue and can be resolved. I wanted to offer a third possibility, and that is we move all these fancy tech toys and outfit the forum room at Central. That would still give us a central location in downtown Santa Rosa, and it's our space. I know that would be more inconvenient for the staff, but it would be more centrally located for everyone to be in downtown Santa Rosa.
Okay, can I speak to that?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, the Central Library Forum Room, because it's a 60-year-old building, is going to have lots and lots more costs associated with doing that forum room. And it has been upgraded already to the extent possible without costing a gazillion dollars. Plus the lighting in there for the video production is way difficult. We had the folks from the city of Santa Rosa come over because a former director wanted us to move those meetings to the Central Library when he was the director. So in my tenure here, we have worked really hard with every single forum room to bring them up to technical capabilities. I think we did a wonderful job down the street here at the Rona Park Katati Library. I think that from a practical standpoint, I think it's much more practical to do it in this location because it's, you know, it's been easier really to pull the wire, to get the gear in place because it drops ceilings and so forth. It's just really been a lot better. And you're a tech guy, so you know that pulling Ethernet in a 60-year-old building that was never designed for that is crazy making.
Actually, I did that back when it was the big yellow coax cable. Those pictures. Anyway, I just think a central location would be more
Central.
central.
Well, I live the furthest of anybody and it doesn't bother me to drive here. So I don't know if that's of any use to anybody, but. Oh,
It's on.
it's on, but I'm kind of. So project. Anyway, okay, any more comments? Okay, so go home and think about it. We're not voting on it this time. Next month, it'll be on the action items by motion, I guess. So think about it. I can hear here. I can't hear in the other place. And it's almost everybody. And at first I thought it was just me and my hearing was going. And it, as I began listening to others, it's other people having the same issue. Yes, the stairs are dangerous. They scare the heck out of me every time I have to go up or down them. So I have some very, and as Tom said, it's warm. So, yeah. So this has its advantages. Lana?
I know that Central Libraries is a consideration for moving of the meetings, but with the downtown planning happening with Santa Rosa, we just don't know what's going to happen with our downtown library. So I asked that that also be a factor in this decision. You know, the downtown library is an asset for the city of Santa Rosa, and nothing's been decided as of yet, but that is a consideration from the city of Santa Rosa. Same with City Hall.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the considerations with that building is to have it taken down and something more city-oriented put in. So, and melding the library into all those buildings that the city is going to make as a mall thing, I guess. So, okay, so next time. Okay, now we're down to the potential lease provisions. Again, we're discussing, does anybody have any comments on them? Andy? Okay.
I would just like to thank the committee for pulling this together. I think this looks like a really good starting point. I hope we can use this to begin to establish some consistency among the leases, not to mention actually having leases. So thank you.
Small detail, you know.
Yay. Well done.
I want to say just briefly that of the leases we have, almost all of them are these basic clauses. And these go back 40 years when we started forming together, coming together, everything. And a very simple format was used at that time. And that's basically what it is that we've got there. And it's presented in a very simplistic manner because one of the things I learned years ago as a lawyer, you don't start with a complex document saying this is what we want to agree to. You start with a simple little outline and then you expand it. Once they say, oh, this sounds pretty good. Yeah, okay. So that's the concept behind it. It's an easy thing to talk about. It's simple. It's basically what we have for almost every piece we have.
Okay, David, you were next.
Yeah, I've heard that some who will remain anonymous, putting together these things, feel that these lease provisions may be too strict and may constrain our ability to make good deals with various members. And so I wanted to know, first, is it true that there's a division of opinion about how strict these are? And second, would you consider something saying that some of these things can be waived on particular leases if necessary?
We're not approving these as required provisions.
I know.
We're not saying that any lease has to look like this exactly. We're saying here's a talking point to start from. And I'm not sure what you mean by strict either.
Well, that there are too many of them in certain cases.
Okay, well, and it's one of the things that you understand is that maybe some of these don't apply to a certain situation. Rohnert Park, they take care of the parking lot, so it's not something, it just depends.
Well,
But the idea is to be flexible, but to have something simple we're starting with.
well, if I could continue, my concern is that these are going to wind up in the bylaws, either as an appendix adopted and attached to the bylaws or in the text.
We're not discussing where it's going to be tonight.
But that depends on
Just-
what's in them.
What do you think about these? Not where or how,
Well,
just what do you think about
But if
these?
my problem is that I will think differently depending on if they're a Procrustean bed into which everything has to fit. And Thomas said, no, not really, but nothing in here says, no, not really.
That will come later.
Okay.
Okay, Karen?
Well, I'm just reading it as standard lease provisions, which
Mhm.
means like, here's your basic recipe. That's how I'm reading it. I'm not a lawyer, but
part of the discussion has been that these would not be, most recent discussion, these would not be included in the bylaws as had been previously approved. A very simple, basic concept has been agreed that we're going to have in the bylaws, just a basic thing that the cities, the members are supposed to provide a building in some way, and we will keep its service, keep the library open there and so forth. So all this is not supposed to go in the bylaws. That's why we even brought it to you.
Okay, that's really helpful because I was understanding there had been a significant snarl over this. So that resolves my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say, just note of history, that on page 10 of our joint powers agreement, it says the commission shall establish lease agreement standards and requirements in its bylaws. And so the reason that we did this whole thing, it's since June of 2018, we started doing this, was because our general counsel said, you have to do this. You don't have any standards. And so that's why we've entered into this thing. And on top of it, then we started
But
redoing
we're
our
looking at the
bylaws.
standards tonight, Barbara. We're not looking about where we're going to place.
No, I'm not arguing that point, but I'm just, for historical reasons, that's why we did this whole thing. That's why we started in here. And staff does need some guidelines when they go out and obviously talk to the jurisdictions. And so those are going to be guidelines. And as Tom said, our general counsel has written up some draft language, which I think we should probably bring before the commission, that kind of summarizes
That's
this.
not the issue tonight. How do these standards fit? Are you comfortable with them, at least in basic ideas? Do these standards fit? Regardless of where they go, will they fit? Do they cover what you think needs to be covered by every lease, regardless of how we put it in? It's not where it's going. That's not what we're discussing. Do these cover the issues? If it's in the bylaws, if it's in the,
Well, I'm just going to say yes, because I'm on the committee and we worked on it and we figured that out. But I think that this is a little blurry now, but that's okay.
okay. Any other comments? Andy?
I've negotiated a lot of contracts, not necessarily a lot of leases, but some, but a lot of contracts. And I feel like what you guys have done here is great because it gives, I could, and I don't think this would ever fall to me. I think this would fall to Ann and the staff. but I would feel very comfortable talking to the city manager of Healdsburg and saying, here's an outline of what we'd like to discuss as the basis for our lease. I mean, it's short, it's clear, it's reasonable. And I think we all understand that it's just a starting point and that there will be flexibility afforded to the staff to recognize the specific conditions that would affect each property. But I think the team has done a great job, and I would encourage us all to adopt it.
So is this an action item? No, this
No, this is discussion. This is simply discussion. Yes,
Yeah.
David.
For me, the key to approval is the flexibility language you've just discussed. I want to see it in writing, not just on YouTube.
That would come in whatever kind of statement we have around it. So, okay, any other comments? Okay. So be thinking, look at them seriously. What do you think? Do they get everything? Okay. Okay, now this next item, the treatment of pay during library closure, was actually, we needed to have it up in the action items. Now, because we're already dealing with this because of the disasters, and we're in the middle of it. So, and staff, et cetera, would like to know if this works for people, and if so, I want to know, can we prove it as an action item tonight? David?
It works for me. I understand we have the authority to, some flexibility about calling something an urgency item.
Yes.
We have this committee, but we did not do that last month. And so I would be perfectly willing to treat this as an urgency, because this is involved payments during an emergency situation. So
Okay, yes.
Could you turn on your microphone?
Yes, I would favor this as an urgency item and action for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Tom?
Are an urgency item for what just happened or to set a policy for the future? I don't think it would be urgent that we set the policy for the future, but that we say, yes, we should be paying everybody for 2 weeks ago or whenever it was.
Yes, that is it. We will work on a policy for the future, but for now, we just want authorization to say that we were right to pay everybody for that time.
Okay,
I
Tom.
move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve the treatment of pay during the emergency library closure from Sunday, October 27th through Saturday, November 2, 2019.
Yeah, I'll second.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, so we had Tom move, and I think I heard you first. Deborah Doyle, excuse me. You doesn't count. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do I hear anybody against it? Okay, unanimously passed. Okay, so agenda items for future commission meetings. We've got some we're carrying forward on items we've discussed tonight. Are there any others? Tom?
I just want to reiterate the count for each branch by hour, day, and so forth. I think we need to be getting that information out to the branches and in some format so people can see it and look at it and comment upon it so we can get some feedback. I want my friends in lab to be able to say something about it, see it.
Okay. Barbara?
Point of order, I guess it is. I was shouted down earlier when I said I made the motion to accept the Measure Y Oversight Committee. And everybody said, no, it's later, but it was actually on page 4. And so then we, as far as I know, we didn't vote on it later, did we?
Yes,
Did
we
we pass
did.
it later?
And you voted
I'm
for it.
losing my mind.
10-2,
even seconded
10-2, we voted on it.
Items 10, 1, and 10, 2.
God. Okay.
Bunch of senior citizens here.
Hey. I'm turned the wrong way, I'm like, I don't want to, just kidding. But we adopted that, okay.
Yes, we did.
Super, thank you.
I
Okay.
would, I'd like to ask Vicky if she would give us a very short demonstration of the new Chromebooks.
Next time, or another time, not today.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Okay, so time of next meeting is December 2nd, 6 PM. We'll be in the council chambers. I will bring my sweatshirt. So, meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Now, my fellow, what are the Greek mythology was a Greek faith to the one eye.
I felt a little lonely up here. But, okay. I said you had this. I didn't want to be alone. Of course, we'll have more people next time, but.
Thank you, madam.